Keep that kid quiet or get out. Claire Ramsey hissed her hand, striking Amara's cheek with a sharp crack. In her mind, she was merely putting a passenger who didn't belong in first class back in her place. What she couldn't see was the unyielding defiance in Amara's eyes, nor could she possibly know the identity of the man watching everything from the cockpit, because the deep, steady voice that suddenly boomed over the intercom wasn't the captain's. It was her husband's, Marcus Ellison, the CEO of Horizon Airlines, and he had just witnessed the assault on his wife. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. If you stand for justice, hit like, subscribe, and join us for more epic showdowns. What's Claire's next move? The first-class cabin of the Horizon Airlines flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles buzzed with stunned silence, broken only by the hum of the engines slicing through the sky at 35,000 pout. Amara Jackson sat in seat 3A, her cheek blazing red from Claire Ramsey's slap, the sting radiating through her jaw like a wildfire. Her 6-month-old son Isaiah nestled against her chest, his tiny hands clutching her blouse, oblivious to the chaos his soft coo had ignited. Amara's deep brown eyes locked onto Claire's unyielding, refusing to let tears spill despite the throbbing pain. She wouldn't give this woman the satisfaction. Around her, passengers shifted uncomfortably, some fumbling for their phones, fingers trembling as they hit record, capturing the aftermath of a moment that felt like a bomb had just gone off. Claire stood over Amara, her 40-year-old frame rigid, her blonde hair pulled tight in a bun that matched the crispness of her navy blue uniform. Her pale face twisted into a sneer, lips curling as she spat venom. "People like you don't belong up here. Keep that kid quiet or get out." The words dripped with contempt, her assumption clear as day. Amara's black skin, her baby, her very presence in first class were an affront to Claire's carefully curated world. A few passengers gasped. Others whispered their voices, a low murmur rippling through the cabin like static. A white businessman in a pinstriped suit 2 rows back muttered to his seatmate, "She's got some nerve bringing a baby up here," his tone siding with Claire's disdain. Another, a young Latina woman, shook her head in disbelief, her fingers hovering over her phone screen, debating whether to post the unfolding drama. Amara didn't flinch. She adjusted Isaiah, gently, her movements slow and deliberate. Her silence a wall Claire couldn't breach. Claire's eyes narrowed, her confidence wavering for a split second as she registered the defiance in Amara's gaze. She opened her mouth to speak again, to double down on her authority, when the intercom crackled to life, cutting through the tension like a blade. "This is Marcus Ellison, CEO of Horizon Airlines. That's my wife you just hit." The voice was deep, steady, and carried a weight that made the air in the cabin feel heavier. Every head snapped toward the speakers, embedded in the ceiling, eyes wide, mouths agape. Passengers exchanged frantic glances, their whispers escalating into a chaotic hum. "Did he just say CEO?" A gray-haired woman in 5C hissed to her husband. "Oh, she's done for," the Latina woman murmured, her phone now recording without hesitation. Claire's smirk melted away, replaced by a flicker of panic that danced across her sharp features. She laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound that echoed hollowly in the stunned cabin. "That's ridiculous. Some passengers playing a prank," she said, her voice loud enough to assert control, to convince herself as much as anyone else. She waved a dismissive hand, her manicured nails glinting under the overhead lights, and turned to stride back toward the galley, her heels clicking against the carpeted floor with forced confidence. But before she could take 3 steps, the captain's voice boomed over the intercom, calm but firm, shattering her delusion. "Claire Ramsey, this is Captain Holloway. That was Marcus Ellison. Report to the galley immediately." The cabin erupted into a flurry of gasps and murmurs. The businessman in the pinstripe suit dropped his whiskey glass, the amber liquid splashing across his tray table as he gaped at the scene. The Latina woman's eyes sparkled with vindication, her phone angled to catch Claire's retreat. Claire froze mid-step, her shoulders stiffening as the reality sank in. She spun around her face, a mask of disbelief, searching the rows for some sign. This was a mistake. Her gaze landed on Amara again, who met it with that same unshakable calm, rocking Isaiah gently, as if nothing had happened. Claire's lips parted, but no words came out. Her authority, her kingdom of first class was crumbling, and she could feel every pair of eyes boring into her. Captain Holloway emerged from the cockpit, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a non-nonsense stare. He marched down the aisle, his polished shoes thudding against the floor, and stopped beside Claire. "Gee, now," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Claire's jaw tightened, her pale cheeks flushing red as she realized the passengers were watching her every move. Some smirked, others glared, and a few kept filming their phones held high like torches in a mob. She forced a tight smile, trying to salvage her dignity, and followed the captain, her steps stiff and mechanical. As she passed Amara's seat, she couldn't resist a final jab, her voice low and venomous. "You think you've won? I'll fix this, you little." She trailed off, muttering a racial slur under her breath. Too quiet for the captain to hear, but loud enough for Amara to catch every syllable. Amara's fingers tightened around Isaiah, her nails digging into her palms. But her face remained a fortress of composure. She wouldn't let Claire see the anger simmering beneath her skin, the fury at being reduced to a stereotype in front of strangers. The captain ushered Claire into the galley, the curtain swishing shut behind them, muffling the sharp exchange that followed. Passengers craned their necks trying to eavesdrop, but the thick fabric blocked the words. Inside, Claire's voice rose shrill and defensive. "She doesn't belong here. First class isn't for people with screaming brats." Captain Holloway cut her off, his tone icy. "You struck a passenger, Claire Marcus Ellison's wife. You're lucky you're not in cuffs right now." Back in the cabin, the mood shifted. The Latina woman lowered her phone, her expression softening as she leaned toward Amara. "You okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. Amara nodded, her lips curving into a faint smile, though her cheek still burned. "I've had worse," she said softly, her voice steady despite the chaos. The businessman in the pinstripe suit avoided her gaze, suddenly engrossed in wiping his spilled whiskey, as if ashamed of his earlier comment. A teenage boy across the aisle, his hoodie pulled low, gave Amara a thumbs up, his grin wide and conspiratorial. The support was fleeting but real. A small boy in the storm Claire had unleashed. Claire, meanwhile, stowed in the galley, her mind racing. She leaned against the counter, her arms crossed tight, replaying the intercom announcement in her head. Marcus Ellison, CEO, husband. It didn't add up. How could that woman with her cheap blouse and squirming kid be married to the man who owned Horizon Airlines? Claire's worldview, built on rigid lines of who belonged where, cracked under the weight of the truth. She'd assumed Amara was an intruder, a nobody who'd scammed her way into first class. Now the power dynamic had flipped, and Claire hated it. Her fingers twitched toward her phone tucked in her apron pocket. She'd fight this. She'd turn it around. Suspension termination. Not if she could help it. The captain stepped out of the galley, leaving Claire alone with her plotting. He returned to the cockpit, his face grim. Knowing this was only the beginning, Claire pulled out her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen as she texted her union rep, a wiry man named Ted she'd known for years. "They're trying to fire me over some black chick with a baby. Ellison's wife, they say. Total setup. Get me out of this." She hit send, her pulse pounding with defiance. She wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. She'd make Amara pay for daring to sit in her domain, for daring to exist where Claire didn't think she belonged. In seat 3A, Amara rocked Isaiah, his soft breaths calming her racing heart. She touched her cheek, the slap still a fresh wound, but her mind was elsewhere. Marcus's voice over the intercom had been her lifeline, a promise of protection. She'd known he'd step in, but not like this, not so publicly. She glanced out the window, the clouds streaking past like white flames, and whispered to herself, "She has no idea what's coming." Claire thought she'd humiliated Amara, stripped her of dignity in front of everyone. But Amara wasn't the one humiliated now. Claire's smug reign was teetering, and the fall would be brutal. The passengers settled back into their seats, some still stealing glances at Amara, others at the galley curtain where Claire hid. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, the flight cruising smoothly toward Los Angeles, but the tension hung thick. A storm cloud ready to burst. Claire's muttered slur echoed in Amara's mind, fueling a quiet resolve. She wasn't just a passenger caught in a racist outburst. She was Marcus Ellison's wife, and that meant power Claire couldn't fathom. The slap wasn't the end. It was the spark. And as the plane soared through the night, Amara knew the real fight was just beginning. The Horizon Airlines flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles sliced through the night sky, its engines a steady roar beneath the dimmed cabin lights 40 minutes from touchdown. In seat 3A, Amara Jackson sat with her 6-month-old son Isaiah pressed against her chest, his tiny breaths a faint rhythm against the chaos that had just erupted. Her cheeks still pulsed with heat from Claire Ramsey's slap. A dull ache that throbbed in time with her heartbeat, but she kept her gaze fixed out the window, watching clouds twist like smoke against the endless black. She'd won, hadn't she? Marcus's voice over the intercom had turned the tables, stripping Claire of her smug control in front of everyone. Yet something gnawed at Amara's gut, a whisper of unease she couldn't shake. In the galley behind the thick blue curtain, Claire Ramsey paced like a caged animal, her heels scuffing the linoleum floor. Her blonde bun had loosened slightly, a few strands, falling across her flushed face, but her eyes burned with defiance. Captain Holloway stood before her, his broad frame filling the narrow space, his salt and pepper hair catching the faint glow of the overhead bulb. "You're suspended, Claire," he said, his voice a low growl, steady but sharp. "Conduct unbecoming. You struck a passenger, Marcus Ellison's wife, no less. You're off this flight the second we land." The words hit Claire like a slap of her own, her pale hands clenching into fists at her sides. Suspended, not fired, not yet. But a public stripping of her wings, her authority yanked away mid-flight. The cabin beyond the curtain buzzed with a new energy. Passengers still reeling from Marcus's bombshell shifted their focus. The Latina woman in 4B, her phone now resting in her lap, leaned across the aisle toward Amara. "That was unreal. You're tougher than she'll ever be," she said, her voice warm with admiration. Amara offered a small nod, her lips twitching into a tired smile. "Thank you," she murmured, adjusting Isaiah's blanket. The teenage boy in the hoodie, seated in 6C, piped up next, his voice cracking with excitement. "Man, she got wrecked." You see her face when the CEO spoke. A ripple of laughter spread through the rows, lightening the air. Even the businessman in the pinstriped suit who'd spilled his whiskey earlier glanced over with a grudging nod. His earlier judgment softened by the turn of events. Back in the galley, Claire's mind raced, her breath coming in short, angry bursts. Suspension wasn't the end. She'd claw her way back. She glared at Captain Holloway, her voice rising, brittle and sharp. "This is insane. That woman doesn't belong in first class, baby, or not. I was doing my job keeping order." Holloway's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as he stepped closer. "Your job doesn't include assault. Claire, Marcus Ellison's on the line right now, and he's promising further action. You're lucky I'm not locking you in the jump seat." Claire's stomach twisted, but she forced a scoff, her arrogance a flimsy shield. "Further action. He's bluffing. She's just some nobody with a rich husband." The captain didn't respond. He turned, brushing past the curtain, leaving Claire alone with her fury. She yanked her phone from her apron pocket, her fingers trembling as she typed a frantic message to Ted, her union rep. "Suspended mid-flight over that black chick. They're saying she's Ellison's wife. Total setup." "Fight this, Ted. I'm not going down." She hit send, her pulse hammering in her ears. She wouldn't let this stand. She'd turn it around, make them see Amara as the intruder, the problem. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. She'd dealt with passengers like Amara before, people she'd pegged as out of place, and she'd always come out on top. This wouldn't be different. In the cabin, a junior flight attendant named Laya approached Amara, her movements hesitant, her freckled face flushed with nerves. She carried a folded blanket and a bottle of water, her hazel eyes darting toward the galley curtain, before settling on Amara. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry about everything," she said, her voice soft but earnest. "Here for you and the little one." She handed over the items, her hands lingering, as if unsure whether to say more. Amara took the blanket, draping it over Isaiah's tiny frame, and met Isla's gaze. "It's not your fault," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "I'm okay. We're okay." Laya nodded relief, washing over her, and stepped back, disappearing down the aisle to tend to other passengers. Amara leaned back in her seat, the leather creaking beneath her, and let out a slow breath. The applause from earlier echoed in her mind, the passengers' support a fleeting balm. She whispered to Isaiah, her voice barely audible over the engine hum. "We're safe now, baby. She's gone." The words felt true, a fragile victory settling in her chest. Claire was suspended, humiliated, out of sight behind that curtain. Marcus had her back, his voice a thunderclap that had shaken Claire's world. Amara's fingers brushed Isaiah's soft curls, her mind drifting to the landing ahead. Maybe this was over. Maybe she could walk off this plane and leave the sting of Claire's hand behind. But then it happened. A faint ping sounded from the Latina woman's phone in 4B. She glanced at the screen, her eyes widening, and leaned toward Amara again, her voice urgent. "You need to see this." She turned the phone, revealing a video thumbnail. Claire's slap frozen mid-motion. Amara's stunned face in sharp focus. The title blazed in bold letters. "Racist flight attendant owned." The view count ticked upward. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, all mid-flight, spreading like wildfire across the internet. Comments flooded in below. "She deserved it. Horizon needs to fire her." "That's Marcus Ellison's wife. Game over." Amara's breath caught. Her victory suddenly sharper, more real. The world knew now. Claire couldn't hide. In the galley, Claire's phone buzzed. Ted's reply lighting up the screen. "On it, we'll push back. Suspension's not termination. Stay cool." She smirked, a flicker of triumph cutting through her rage. The union had her back. She'd spin this, make it Amara's fault, claimed she'd been provoked. She didn't hear the captain's radio crackle in the cockpit, didn't catch Marcus's voice filtering through again. Low and lethal. Suspension's just the start. "Holloway, she's done at Horizon. Make sure she knows." Holloway's response was, "Kurt understood, sir." Claire, oblivious, leaned against the galley counter, plotting her next move, her fingers tapping a rhythm of vengeance. Amara stared at the phone screen. The viral video, a double-edged sword. It was justice, yes, but it was exposure, too. Her EBA face, her pain, splashed across the internet for strangers to dissect. She handed the phone back, her hands steady, despite the storm brewing inside her. "Thank you," she said to the Latina woman, who nodded, her expression fierce. "She's toast now." The woman replied, her voice thick with satisfaction. Amara wanted to believe it. Claire was suspended. The video was out. Marcus was in control. It felt like a wind, a clean break from the nightmare that had unfolded 35,000 FT in the air. But that unease lingered, a shadow creeping into her relief. Claire's muttered slur replayed in her mind, the hatred behind it, a promise of more to come. Amara hugged Isaiah closer, his warmth grounding her. She'd survived the slap, the humiliation, and now the world was on her side. Or was it? The plane dipped slightly, turbulence, rattling the overhead bins, a jolt that mirrored the uncertainty in her gut. Claire wasn't the type to slink away. Amara knew that much. And as the landing gear hummed faintly in the distance, she couldn't shake the feeling that this false victory was just the calm before a bigger, uglier storm. Hey, you amazing viewers! What do you think comment number 1 if you agree Claw's suspension isn't enough? She needs to be fired for good. Or drop it too if you think Amara should have fought back right then and there. If you're raging at this injustice like we are, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next twist. This story is heating up, and we need you with us. Will Claire slink away quietly, or is she cooking up something nastier than a slap? What's her next play? The Horizon Airlines flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles cruised steadily at $35,000 deft. The cabin lights casting a soft glow over the first-class seats as the plane neared its final descent. Amara Jackson sat in 3A, her 6-month-old son Isaiah dozing against her chest, his tiny snores a fragile anchor in the storm that had erupted an hour ago. Her cheek still ached from Claire Ramsey's slap, a dull throb that pulsed beneath her skin. But the warmth of the blanket Laya had given her and the passenger's fleeting support had lulled her into a cautious calm. She glanced out the window, the city lights of Los Angeles twinkling below like scattered stars, and let herself believe the worst was behind her. Marcus's voice, the captain's orders, the viral video, it all pointed to Claire's defeat, or so she thought. In the cramped crew area at the back of the plane, Claire Ramsey stood isolated, her suspension a fresh wound she refused to let heal. The thick curtain separated her from the passengers' prying eyes. But she could feel their judgment seeping through the fabric, a weight that fueled her fury. Her blonde hair hung loose, now strands clinging to her sweat-dampened forehead, her navy uniform wrinkled from pacing. She clutched her phone, its screen glowing in the dim light. Her lifeline to a fight she wasn't ready to lose. Suspension wasn't enough to break her. She turned this around. Make them all pay. Starting with Amara. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, crafting a message to Ted, her union rep. But this time, it wasn't just a plea for help. It was a weapon. She provoked me. Claire typed her thumbs, jabbing the screen with venom. That black chick with the baby was screaming, disrupting everyone. I acted to protect the passengers. Now they're calling me racist. It's reverse racism, Ted. Spin it. She hit send, her lips twisting into a sneer as she imagined the chaos she'd unleash. She'd seen the viral video, her slap plastered across the internet, but she wasn't about to let it define her. She'd rewrite the story paint, Amara as the villain, the entitled intruder who'd played the race card to ruin a hard-working white woman. Claire leaned against the wall, her breath steadying as she pictured the headlines shifting in her favor. She'd done this before, twisted truth to keep her power intact, and she'd do it again. The plane jolted slightly, a pocket of turbulence rattling the overhead bins, and Claire's phone buzzed almost instantly. Ted's reply flashed up. Got it. Posting on X now. We'll flip the narrative. Hang tight. Claire's smirk widened. Ted was fast, ruthless, a bulldog in a cheap suit who'd saved her from disciplinary hearings before. She scrolled to X herself, her heart racing as she typed her own post. Her words dripping with calculated victimhood. Attacked by a disruptive passenger in first class today. Baby screaming mom refusing to cooperate. I acted to keep peace. Now I'm suspended. This is what happens when you enforce rules against the wrong people. She tagged Horizon Airlines hit post and watched the likes trickle in her chest, swelling with defiance. Back in first class, Amara's moment of peace shattered. Laya, the junior attendant, hurried down the aisle, her freckled face pale, her hazel eyes wide with alarm. She stopped beside Amara, clutching her phone like it was a live grenade. You need to see this, she said, her voice trembling as she thrust the device forward. Amara took it, her fingers brushing Wyla's cold ones, and stared at the screen. X was ablaze with Claire's post, already at 500 likes and climbing. Ted's follow-up roared louder. Claire Ramsey's a hero targeted by a privileged passenger and her CEO husband. Reverse racism at its finest. Reinstate her now. Below, a flood of replies erupted, each more vicious than the last. Welfare queen snuck into first class, typical crying racism to get her way. Horizons caving to the woke mob. Amara's stomach dropped, her breath catching in her throat. The viral video racist flight attendant owned had been her shield, but now it was cracking. She scrolled further, her eyes stinging as racist trolls piled on there. Words, a barrage of hate aimed straight at her. "Go back to the projects where you belong," one wrote. "Bet she's never worked a day in her life," another spat. Threats followed, sharp and personal. "Watch your back, lady. Someone needs to shut her up for good." Amara's hands shook the phone, slipping slightly as she handed it back to Laya. "They're lying," she whispered, her voice tight, her calm fracturing under the weight of the onslaught. Laya's face crumpled, her voice barely audible over the engine hum. "I'm so sorry. This isn't right." She glanced toward the crew area where Claire lurked unseen, and Amara followed her gaze. She couldn't see Claire, but she could feel her, a shadow gloating in the darkness. The passengers around her shifted, their earlier support wavering. The Latina woman in 4B frowned at her own phone, muttering, "This can't be true, can it?" The teenage boy in 6C, once grinning now, scrolled silently, his thumbs hovering as if unsure what to believe. The businessman in the pinstripe suit snorted, his skepticism returning. Maybe she did push her too far. He grumbled loud enough for Amara to hear. The cabin's unity splintered, doubt creeping in like fog. Amara hugged Isaiah closer, his warmth a lifeline as her mind raced. Claire wasn't done. Suspension hadn't silenced her. It had lit a fuse. Amara's false victory, that fleeting moment of safety, dissolved into a new nightmare. She pulled out her own phone, her fingers steady despite the panic clawing at her chest, and dialed Marcus. His voice answered on the first ring, deep and urgent. "Amara, you okay? I saw the video. She's suspended, but it's worse now." Amara cut in her words, rushing out. "She's lying online." Marcus saying, "I attacked her. People are threatening me." Marcus's silence stretched for a beat. Then his tone hardened. Steel in every syllable. "I'll sue her for defamation. She won't get away with this." Amara nodded, though he couldn't see her clinging to his promise, like a raft in a storm. She ended the call, her eyes drifting to the window again. The lights of Los Angeles closer now, a sprawling grid of hope and danger. Marcus's power was her shield, but Claire's retaliation was a blade she hadn't seen coming. The plane banked slightly, the descent beginning, and Amara's pulse quickened. She'd thought the SLAP was the worst of it, that Claire's humiliation would end it. But the smear campaign was bigger, uglier, a racial firestorm she couldn't outrun at $35,000 fee. She kissed Isaiah's forehead, whispering, "We'll fight this, baby." Her voice a vow against the hate raining down on her. In the crew area, Claire refreshed X, her smirk growing as Ted's post hit 1,000 likes. Racist trolls swarmed the thread, their fury a chorus she'd summoned with a few well-placed lies. She didn't care about the truth. Amara had provoked her by existing, by daring to sit in first class with her dark skin, and her baby by being Marcus Ellison's wife. Claire's worldview demanded she punish that, and now she had an army to do it. She typed another post, her fingers dancing with glee. "Thank you for the support. I'm the real victim here. She's using her husband's money to silence me." The likes spiked again, her grin widening. She'd flipped the script, turned Amara's victory into a trap. The cabin lights flickered as the plane dropped lower, the captain's voice crackling over the intercom. "Prepare for landing in Los. Angeles cabin crew, take your seats." Claire stayed put, her suspension keeping her from the jump seat. But she didn't care. She'd planted the seeds, and they were growing fast. She imagined Amara squirming up there, reading the hate, feeling the walls close in. "Good letter, squirm." Claire's phone buzzed again. "Ted? Union's pushing Horizon hard. We'll get you back." She leaned back, satisfaction curling in her chest. Suspension was temporary. She'd win this war. make Amara regret ever stepping onto her plane. Amara sat rigid in 3A, the city lights now a glaring sprawl beneath her. The viral video had been her triumph, but Claire's lies had poisoned it, turning strangers into enemies. Marcus's lawsuit would fight the defamation, but the damage was spreading a wildfire she couldn't contain. She glanced at Isaiah, his peaceful sleep, a stark contrast to the chaos in her mind. She'd thought she was safe, that Claire's suspension was the end. Now, with every ping of a notification, she felt the ground slipping away. The plane's wheels winded as they lowered the landing imminent. But Amara knew this was no escape. Claire's retaliation had begun, and it was only going to get worse. The Horizon Airlines flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles touched down with a sharp jolt, the wheels screeching against the runway as the plane slowed to a halt at the gate. Amara Jackson sat in seat 3A, her 6-month-old son Isaiah stirring against her chest, his soft whimpers breaking the silence that had settled over her during the final descent. Her cheek still burned from Claire Ramsey's slap, a lingering sting now overshadowed by the digital venom Claire had unleashed mid-flight. Amara's phone rested in her lap. It screamed dark but heavy, with the weight of the racist threats and lies she'd glimpsed before takeoff. She adjusted Isaiah's blanket, her fingers trembling slightly, and took a deep breath. The plane was her battlefield, but the terminal ahead promised safety. Marcus was waiting. She'd walk off this nightmare and leave Claire's hate behind. That's what she told herself. The cabin lights brightened and passengers unbuckled their seatbelts, stretching and gathering their belongings with the casual ease of people untouched by the storm Amara had endured. The Latina woman in 4B offered a sympathetic nod as she stood, her phone tucked away, while the teenage boy in 6C flashed a quick grin, his hoodie shadowing his face. The businessman in the pinstripe suit avoided her gaze entirely. His earlier doubt hardened into indifference as he tugged his briefcase from the overhead bin. Amara rose slowly, her legs stiff from hours of tension, and hoisted her small diaper bag over her shoulder. She cradled Isaiah, his warmth steadying her, and stepped into the aisle. The jet bridge ahead, a tunnel to freedom. Claire Ramsey, confined to the crew area, watched from behind the galley curtain as passengers filed out. Her blonde hair hung in disarray. Her uniform crumpled, but her pale eyes glinted with a vicious satisfaction. Suspension hadn't broken her, it had sharpened her edge. Her phone buzzed incessantly, X notifications piling up as her smear campaign gained traction. Ted's latest text glowed on the screen. "Supporters are rallying at LAX. Show them. You're the victim. We've got this." Claire's lips curled into a grin. She'd turned Amara's viral victory into a weapon, and now her army awaited. She stayed back, letting the captain and crew exit first, her presence a shadow ready to strike. Amara emerged from the jet bridge into the bustling Los Angeles terminal, the air thick with the hum of announcements and the shuffle of travelers. She scanned the crowd, searching for Marcus's familiar 6'4" frame, his broad shoulders a beacon she needed now more than ever. The glass walls reflected a sea of faces, but something felt off. A cluster of people near the gate stood too still, their eyes locked on her, their postures rigid. Then it hit her. A low chant rising from the group, growing louder with every step she took. "Go back to coach. You don't belong." The words slammed into her like a fist, her breath catching as she froze mid-stride. The mob surged forward, a dozen strong, their faces twisted with rage. Claire's lies had stoked. Men in trucker hats and women clutching purses waved handmade signs. Justice for Claire. No special treatment. Their voices overlapped, a cacophony of hate fueled by X-posts and Ted's rallying cries. She attacked a worker. A burly man bellowed, his beard flecked with spit, welfare trash and first class. A woman shrieked, her blonde curls bouncing as she jabbed a finger at Amara. Cameras flashed, not from passengers now, but from the mob, their phones aimed to capture Amara's every flinch. Security guards, two lanky men in gray uniforms, rushed to her. But the crowd pressed closer, their shouts drowning out the guards' calls to disperse. Amara clutched Isaiah tighter, his whimpers turning to cries as the noise engulfed them. Her heart pounded, her eyes darting for an escape, but the mob circled like wolves. "You think you're better than us?" A man in a red cap snarled, stepping within arm's reach. Amara's voice shook as she spoke, steady despite the fear clawing her throat. "Back off. I'm just trying to leave." Her defiance only inflamed them. The chants morphing into slurs she'd seen online but never faced so raw, so close. "Go back where you came from." They roared their hatred, a wall she couldn't breach. Claire emerged from the jet bridge, then escorted by a third security guard, her head high, her smirk barely concealed. She stayed at a distance, her arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold like a conductor admiring her orchestra. The mob spotted her, their cheers shifting to her defense. "Claw's the real hero," a woman yelled, waving her sign high. Claire nodded subtly, her eyes locking with Amaris across the terminal. A silent taunt. "I did this." She'd turned suspension into a rallying cry, her lies igniting a firestorm Amara hadn't seen coming. The guards pushed through, forming a flimsy barrier around Amara, but the crowd's fury didn't relent, their phones still rolling, live streaming her. Humiliation. Then Marcus arrived. His towering figure cut through the terminal like a blade, his dark suit stark against the chaos. His deep voice boomed a thunderclap that silenced the mob for a split second. "Get away from my wife now!" His presence was electric, his brown eyes blazing as he shoved past the nearest heckler, a man in a flannel shirt who stumbled back, stunned. The security guards rallied, emboldened by Marcus's command, and began herding the crowd away, their batons raised but unused. The mob faltered, some retreating under Marcus's glare, others muttering curses as they dispersed, their signs drooping like wilted flags. Amara exhaled, her knees weak as Marcus reached her, his strong arms wrapping around her and Isaiah. "I've got you," he said, his voice low, fierce with protection. She leaned into him, her cheek pressed against his chest, the mob's echoes fading. As his heartbeat steadied her, the terminal buzzed around them, travelers gawking. But Marcus's power carved a bubble of safety she clung to. He turned to Claire, who stood 50 feet away, her smirk faltering as she met his gaze. "You're fired!" he declared, his words cutting through the air like a guillotine. "Effective immediately! No appeal! You're done at Horizon!" Claire's face twisted, her pale skin flushing crimson as she stepped forward, her voice shrill with disbelief. "You can't do this! I've got rights! The union!" Marcus cut her off, his tone icy. "Assaulting my wife, smearing her online. You've got nothing. Get out of my airport." The security guard beside Claire grabbed her arm, pulling her back as she screamed, "This isn't over!" "You'll pay for this." Her threats echoed hollow against Marcus's authority, but her eyes burned with a promise of vengeance. She jerked free, storming toward the exit, her heels clacking a furious rhythm. Amara watched her go, Marcus's arm a shield around her shoulders. The mob was gone, scattered by security, their cameras stilled. She felt a flicker of triumph, a near wind pulsing through her veins. Claire was fired, not just suspended. Marcus had crushed her in front of everyone. Isaiah quieted his cries, easing as Amara rocked him gently, her breath steadying. "We're okay now," she whispered more to herself than him, her voice soft against the terminal's clamor. She looked up at Marcus, his jaw set, his eyes scanning the crowd for any lingering threat. He'd saved her, turned the ambush into a rout. She believed it was over. But as they moved toward the baggage claim, a chill crept up her spine. Claire's parting scream lingered in her ears, a vow that didn't feel empty. The terminal's glass walls reflected their figures. Marcus towering, Amara cradling Isaiah, but beyond them a shadow shifted. A man in a gray hoodie lingered near the exit, his phone pressed to his ear, his eyes tracking Claire's retreat. Amara didn't notice him, her focus on Marcus on the safety he promised. But the man nodded once, slipping outside as Claire vanished into the crowd. The ambush. It failed. But Claire's war hadn't ended. She'd lost her job, her power stripped bare, yet her smirk as she'd left hinted at something darker brewing. Amara stepped closer to Marcus, her diaper bag bumping against her hip, the weight of the day pressing down. The terminal hummed with normally now travelers oblivious to the battle she'd just survived. She'd escaped the mob. Claire's firing a victory she could taste. But that chill wouldn't fade. Marcus squeezed her shoulder, his voice a low rumble. "She's gone, Amara. We'll handle the rest." She nodded, wanting to believe him, but her gut whispered a warning. The plane had landed, but the ground beneath her felt unsteady, a battlefield shifting beneath her feet. The Los Angeles airport terminal faded into a blur as Amara Jackson stepped into the security office 2 hours after landing her 6-month-old son, Isaiah, still cradled against her chest. The glass walls of the cramped room reflected her exhausted face, her cheek bruised from Claire Ramsey's slap, now a mottled purple under the harsh fluorescent lights. Marcus Ellison, her towering husband, and Horizon Airline's CEO stood beside her, his dark suit rumpled from shoving through the mob that had ambushed them at the gate. His deep voice rumbled with controlled fury as he spoke to a security guard demanding an escort to their car. Amara's heart still raced from the chaos, but Marcus's firing of Claire had felt like a lifeline. She'd escaped the terminal's hate-filled gauntlet, and now with Isaiah safe in her arms, she let herself breathe. The worst was over, or so she believed. The office door swung open, and 2 police officers strode in their Navy uniforms, crisp, their faces set in hard lines. The taller one, a white man with a buzz cut and a jaw L like granite, stepped forward, his badge glinting under the lights. "Amara Jackson," he asked, his tone flat but edged with something cold. Amara nodded, her stomach tightening as she adjusted Isaiah, his soft weight grounding her. "Yes, that's me," she said, her voice steady, despite the unease creeping up her spine. Marcus turned, his broad shoulders squaring as he faced the cops. "What's this about?" he demanded, his brown eyes narrowing. The officer ignored him, pulling a notepad from his pocket, his gaze fixed on Amara like she was a suspect, not a victim. "We've got a report of assault," the officer said, flipping the notepad open. "Filed by Claire Ramsey, claims you attacked her on the flight, provoked a confrontation. She's got witnesses." Amara's breath caught her mind reeling as the words sank in. Assault provoked. She'd been the one slapped, humiliated, mobbed. Yet here was Claire, twisting reality again. Marcus stepped closer, his voice rising. "That's a lie. She hit my wife. There's video proof. Hundreds saw it." The second officer, shorter with a patchy beard, smirked faintly, his hand resting on his belt. "We've got a different video," he said, pulling out his phone and tapping the screen. Amara's blood ran cold as the grainy footage played. It showed her in first class, but the angle was skewed, the sound distorted. Claire's slap was missing, replaced by a clip of Amara raising her arm as if striking first, while Claire flinched dramatically. The edit was clumsy, but convincing, a lie stitched together with just enough truth to deceive. "That's fake," Amara said, her voice shaking with outrage. "She hit me. I never touched her." The tall officer shrugged, his expression unreadable. "Ramsey's story checks out with her union rep and a few passengers." "You're under arrest for assault, ma'am." Before she could protest, he grabbed her arm, yanking Isaiah from her grip. Isaiah wailed, his cries piercing the air, as the shorter officer took him, passing him to a startled security guard. Marcus lunged forward, his fists clenched. "You can't do this. That's my son." The tall cop shoved him back, his hand on his holster. "Step back, sir, or you're next." Amara's world tilted, her wrists locked in cold steel as handcuffs snapped shut. She twisted, her eyes locked on Isaiah, his tiny arms flailing in the guard's awkward hold. "Give me my baby," she shouted, her voice cracking with desperation. The cops ignored her, dragging her toward the door as Marcus roared, "This is a setup. I'll bury you for this." Claire watched from outside, half hidden behind a vending machine in the terminal hallway. Her blonde hair was tucked under a baseball cap. Her fired status a fresh scar she'd turned into fuel. She'd filed the police report an hour ago. Ted handing her the doctored video her union allies had rushed to create. Her lips curled into a satisfied grin as Amara stumbled handcuffed, her cries for Isaiah echoing through the glass. Claire had lost her job, her power stripped by Marcus's decree, but this was better. Jail would break Amara, smear her name beyond repair. The cops, quick to buy Claire's tearful poor white woman act, were her pawns in a game she refused to lose. Amara's feet dragged against the linoleum as the officers hauled her through the terminal. Passengers gawking, some whispering, others filming. The mob from earlier had dispersed, but their hate lingered in the air. A stench Claire's lies had thickened. Marcus followed his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders to his lawyer. A sharp-edged woman named Evelyn he'd hired on the spot. "Get her out now. It's a frame-up, fake video, biased cops, sue Ramsey for everything she's got." His voice trembled with rage, but the system didn't bend. The tall officer shoved Amara into a squad car outside the door, slamming shut with a finality that crushed her fleeting victory. Inside the car, Amara's wrists ached against the cuffs, her chest heaving as she fought panic. Isaiah's cries haunted her, a sound she couldn't reach. The shorter cop slid into the driver's seat, his smirk visible in the rearview mirror. "Should have stayed in coach," he muttered, his tone dripping with the same racism Claire had wielded. Amara's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. "You're wrong," she said, her voice low. "Fierce. That video's a lie." "She hit me." The cop chuckled, starting the engine. "Tell it to the judge, lady. Your kind always has excuses." Claire slipped away from the vending machine. Her cap pulled low as she melted into the terminal crowd. She texted Ted, her fingers swift. "She's arrested." "Video worked. Keep pushing." His reply buzzed back. "Union's on it. Filing for my reinstatement now. You're golden." Claire's grin widened. Marcus had fired her, but she'd flipped the board, turned Amara's escape into a cage. The cops' bias, the doctored footage, the union's muscle. It was a perfect storm, and she'd summoned it. She imagined Amara in a cell, stripped of her baby, her dignity, her CEO husband powerless against a system rigged to believe Claire's tears over Amara's truth. Marcus stormed back into the security office, slamming his fist on the desk as the guard handed Isaiah to a social worker who just arrived, her clipboard clutched like a shield. "Where's my wife?" he demanded, his voice a growl that made the guard flinch. "Police took her! Assault charge!" The guard stammered, stepping back. Marcus snatched Isaiah, cradling him as the social worker protested weakly. "She's not taking my son. This is a setup, and I'll prove it." He dialed Evelyn again, his words sharp. "Find that real footage. Get Amara out tonight. Ramsey's behind this. I want her crushed." Amara sat in the squad car, the city lights streaking past in a blur of red and gold. Her mind raced, piecing together Claire's trap. The slap, the smear campaign, the mob, and now this. False charges, a doctored video cops who saw her skin before her story. Her victory in the terminal. Marcus's firing of Claire had been a mirage shattered by a legal snare she hadn't seen coming. She clenched her fists, the cuffs biting into her wrists, and whispered to herself, "I'll fight this for Isaiah." But as the car turned toward the station, the weight of Claire's retaliation sank in. This wasn't just revenge, it was annihilation. Hey, you incredible viewers, this twist has us reeling. Comment number 1 if you think Claire's gone too far with this fake video. Lock her up instead, or drop a 2 if you believe Amara's strength will outshine this mess. If you're furious at this injustice, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We're in this fight together. Marcus is raging, but can he break this legal trap? What's Claire's next move now that she's got Amara in cuffs? The Los Angeles police station loomed in the gray light of dawn, its concrete walls stark against the smoggy skyline, as Amara Jackson stepped out of the holding cell, her wrists raw from the handcuffs that had bound her overnight. Her 6-month-old son Isaiah wasn't with her. Marcus had taken him home after a tense standoff with social services, but the ache of his absence gnawed at her chest. Her cheek still bore the faint purple imprint of Claire Ramsey's SLAPS mark, now dwarfed by the legal trap that had landed her here. Released on bail just hours ago, thanks to Marcus's lawyer, Evelyn, tearing through red tape, Amara clutched her jacket tight, her dark eyes scanning the street for Marcus's black SUV. She'd survived the false assault charge for now, but the air felt heavier. Charged with a storm she couldn't yet see, Marcus pulled up his 6'4" frame, unfolding from the driver's seat, his face etched with exhaustion and fury. Isaiah slept in the back, strapped into his car seat, his tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. Amara rushed to him, her fingers brushing his soft curls as tears pricked her eyes. "He's okay," Marcus said, his deep voice a lifeline as he pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. "Evelyn's got the real footage queued up. We'll bury Ramsey." Amara nodded, climbing into the passenger seat, her body trembling from the night in a cell, the cop's sneeze still echoing in her ears. She thought Claire's firing was the end, that the arrest was the worst of it. She was wrong. As the SUV rolled through the city, Amara's phone buzzed a flood of notifications, lighting up the screen. She'd barely touched since the flight. She unlocked it, her breath catching, as she saw the headline plastered across every news app: "Black woman attacks heroic attendant video evidence." The doctored footage from Claire's police report had exploded online, shared by outlets hungry for a scandal. The story spun wildly out of control. Amara the aggressor, Claire the victimized worker standing up to privilege. Comments below the articles were a cesspool of hate. "She's a thug hiding behind her rich husband," "Typical entitlement assaulting staff over a baby," "Horizon CEO should be ashamed." Amara's hands shook the phone slipping to her lap as she stared at Marcus. "They're believing her," she whispered, her voice cracking. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles whitening. "It's fake. We'll prove it. Evelyn's filing defamation today." But the damage was racing ahead, unstoppable. Amara scrolled X, where Claire's smear campaign from mid-flight had morphed into a national firestorm. Ted, her union rep, posted relentlessly. "Claire Ramsey's a martyr for workers' rights targeted by a violent passenger. Justice now." The doctored video racked up millions of views, drowning out the original racist flight attendant-owned clip that Haw had briefly been her shield. By noon, protests erupted outside Horizon Airline's Los Angeles headquarters, a squat glass building shimmering in the heat. A crowd of 50 swelled to 200. Claire's supporters, waving signs, scrolled with venom. "Justice for Claire. No VIPs over workers. Reinstate Ramsey." They chanted her name, their voices a roar that rattled the windows. News vans lined the street, cameras rolling as anchors spun Claire's narrative live. "A flight attendant fired unjustly now fights back against a privileged passenger's assault," one reporter intoned, her blonde hair bobbing as she gestured to the crowd. Amara watched from the SUV parked a block away, her stomach twisting as the mob's hate pulsed through the screen Marcus held up on his tablet. At home, the nightmare deepened. Marcus's phone rang off the hook. His assistant Leia from the flight, even all reporting threats pouring in. "We're getting death calls." Marcus set his voice tight as he paced their living room. "Isaiah asleep in a crib nearby. They've got our address. Someone said they'd burn the house down." Amara froze, her eyes darting to the windows, the curtains suddenly too thin. She'd escaped jail. But Claire's lies had turned their sanctuary into a target. The iBeige TV blared a pundit praising Claire. "She's a symbol of resistance against elitism and reverse racism." Amara's skin prickled the racial undertones, a knife twisting deeper. Claire, meanwhile, basked in her twisted triumph. She sat in a cheap motel room across town, her blonde hair pulled back, her fired status a badge she'd flipped into gold. Ted had secured her a TV spot, and she strode onto the set of a local news station. Her uniform swapped for a modest blouse, her eyes glistening with rehearsed tears. "I was just doing my job," she said, her voice trembling for effect. "That woman attacked me, and now I'm the villain because her husband's rich. It's not fair." The host nodded sympathetically, the audience clapping as Claire wiped her eyes. Off camera, Ted texted her, "Unions pressuring Horizon temporary reinstatements on the table. You're winning." Amara fought back her resolve, hardening against the onslaught. She grabbed her phone hands steady now and recorded a video in their kitchen, the morning light streaming through. "This is the truth," she said, her voice raw but fierce, holding up her bruised cheek to the camera. "Claire Ramsey slapped me. She's lying, faking videos, turning people against me because of my skin. I'm not a criminal. I'm a mother, a wife, a passenger who paid for her seat." Tears welled, but she blinked them back, her gaze piercing. "I need you to see me." She posted it, her heart pounding as it uploaded, praying it had cut through the noise. The video gained traction. 10,000 views, then 50,000. Some allies emerging in the comments. "She's telling the truth. Claire's a liar. Look at that bruise." But Claire's machine was stronger. Her TV appearance aired nationwide. Her reinstatement announced mid-broadcast. Horizon's union has negotiated Claire Ramsey's return pending investigation. Amamar's phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the counter as Marcus cursed his fist, slamming the table. "They can't do this," he growled, dialing Evelyn. "She's fired. I made it clear." Evelyn's voice crackled through. "Unions has got leverage. We're fighting it. But the public's buying her story." Amara sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. She'd walked out of jail thinking she'd won that Marcus's power, and the real footage would end this. Now, Claire was back. Her lies a tidal wave, drowning Amara's truth. The protest grew louder, a news chopper buzzing overhead, its shadow flickering across the living room, threatening voicemails piled up. "You're dead. You hear me? Keep your brat out of our skies." Amara's chest tightened, her breath shallow as she glanced at Isaiah's crib. Her family was under siege, the nation's outrage, a weapon Claire wielded with glee. Claire watched the chopper from her motel window, her smirk widening as Ted called. "You're back on payroll tomorrow," he said, his voice smug. "They're eating it up. She's finished." Claire hung up her eyes, glinting with malice. Amara's video was a pebble against her avalanche. She'd turned suspension into martyrdom, firing into a comeback, and now she'd bury Amara under the weight of a country primed to hate her. The motel TV replayed her interview, her crocodile tears a masterpiece. She'd won this round, and the next blow would be even harder. Amara stood, her legs trembling, but her spine straight. She wouldn't break. She grabbed her phone again, refreshing her video. 70,000 views, now a small army forming. "We've got people," she said to Marcus, her voice firm despite the fear. "They see me." Marcus nodded, his jaw set. "Evelyn suing the union, Claire the station. Everyone will fight." But as the chopper's roar faded, a brick crashed through their window glass, shattering across the floor. A note tied to it read, "Get out." Amara's scream woke Isaiah, his cries mingling with hers as the backlash turned deadly. 1 month after the Horizon Airlines flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles, Amara Jackson stood in a Los Angeles courthouse. Her 6-month-old son, Isaiah, safe at home with Marcus's sister, a small mercy in the chaos that had engulfed her life. The courtroom buzzed with a restless energy, its wooden benches packed with reporters. Claire Ramsey's supporters and a handful of Amara's allies, their whispers a low hum beneath the fluorescent lights. Amara's cheek had healed. The bruise from Claire's slap faded to a faint shadow, but the weight of false assault charges pressed down harder than ever. She wore a navy blazer, her hair pulled back, her dark eyes steady as she faced the judge's bench. Marcus sat behind her, his 6'4" frame tense, his deep voice silent, but his presence a rock she clung to. She'd thought the threats the brick through her window were the worst. Today would prove her wrong. The judge, a grizzled white man named Harold Grayson, banged his gavel, his jowls quivering as he glared over his glasses. His reputation as a hardliner with a history of bias against minorities hung over the room like a storm cloud. "Order!" he barked, his voice growly, silencing the crowd. Amara's lawyer, Evelyn, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a steel-gray bob, stood beside her briefcase stuffed with evidence Marcus had fought to secure. Across the aisle, Claire Ramsey sat at the prosecution table, her blonde hair neatly pinned, her modest gray dress a stark contrast to her fired flight attendant uniform. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her face a mask of victimhood as Ted, her union rep turned legal bulldog, whispered in her ear. The trial began. The assault case Claire had fabricated now a public spectacle. The prosecutor, a wiry man with a nasal voice, strode forward, holding up a tablet with the doctored video. On March 19th, Amara Jackson attacked Claire Ramsey, a dedicated flight attendant in first class. He declared pressing play. The grainy footage rolled. Amara's arm raised Claire flinching, the slap erased by clever edits. Gasps rippled through the courtroom, Claire's supporters nodding smugly their signs from the protests. Justice for Claire. Tucked under their seats. Amara clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as the lie played out. "That's not what happened," she whispered to Evelyn, her voice trembling with fury. Claire took the stand next, her performance Oscar-worthy. She clutched the tissue, her voice quavering as she leaned into the microphone. "I was just doing my job, keeping first class peaceful. She came at me yelling, swinging her arm. I feared for my life." Tears spilled down her cheeks, her pale eyes wide with rehearsed terror. Ted patted her shoulder, his grin barely concealed as the jury, mostly white their faces stern, leaned forward, eating it up. Judge Grayson nodded slightly, his pen, scratching notes his bias, a silent tilt in Claire's favor. Amara's stomach twisted, her breath shallow as she watched the room turn against her. She'd survived jail, the mob, the threats, but this was a guillotine poised to drop. Evelyn rose, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Objection, Your Honor. That video's been manipulated. We have the original footage proving Miss Ramsey assaulted my client." She held up a USB drive, her posture unyielding, but Grayson's eyes narrowed, his gavel hovering. "Where's this alleged evidence?" He snapped, his tone dripping with skepticism. Evelyn stepped forward, inserting the drive into the courtroom system, but the screen flickered, then went black. "Technical difficulties," a clerk muttered, fumbling with cables. Evelyn's jaw tightened, her eyes darting to Marcus, who gripped the bench rail, his knuckles white. "This is sabotage," he hissed loud enough for the jury to hear. The real footage, security cam proof of Claire's slap, had disappeared. A glitch too convenient to be chance. Claire's smirk flickered as she wiped her eyes, her allies in the union likely behind the tampering. The prosecutor pounced, waving the USB away. No evidence, no credibility. The defendant stalling. Grayson banged his gavel again, his voice booming. "Enough. We proceed with what's before us." Amara's heart sank, her mind racing. The jury's faces hardened, their doubt shifting to conviction as Claire's sobs filled the silence. She was doomed. Jail loomed her name, a punching bag for a nation Claire had turned against her. Marcus couldn't take it. He surged to his feet, his deep voice thundering through the courtroom. "This is a sham. That judge is corrupt. Ramsey's lying and you're letting her." The gallery erupted, Claire's supporters shouting, "Sit down," while reporters scribbled furiously. Grayson's face reamed, his gavel slamming like a gunshot. "Order, Mr. Ellison, you're in contempt!" Balliffs moved toward Marcus, but his outburst cracked the room's tension. A juror, a young black woman in the back row, frowned, her eyes flickering to Amara with a hint of doubt. Another and older man shifted uncomfortably, his pen pausing. Amara felt a spark of hope, her breath steadying as Evelyn whispered, "He's swaying them. We've got a shot." Claire's mask slipped for a split second, her eyes narrowing, as Marcus sat his glare locked on her. She'd played the victim flawlessly, but his rage had pierced her act. Ted leaned over, his voice urgent. "Stick to the script. We've got this." Claire nodded, dabbing her eyes again, but the jury's shift unnerved her. She'd banked on Grayson's bias, the missing footage, the public's hate. Yet Amara's quiet strength and Marcus's defiance were chipping at her wall. The prosecutor called a recess, the courtroom emptying as whispers swirled. Amara turned to Evelyn, her voice low. "We're losing, aren't we?" Evelyn shook her head, her eyes fierce. "Not yet. Marcus bought us time. We'll find that footage." Outside, Claire's next strike landed. Ted leaked Amara's home address to X, a move planned during her TV comeback. "Here's where the victim hides." He posted the address glowing in bold. Within hours, a racist mob formed outside Amara's suburban house, their chants audible through the courthouse TV as news broke the recess. "Get out, thug!" they screamed, pounding on the door where Marcus's sister barricaded herself with Isaiah. Amara's phone buzzed with a frantic call from her sister-in-law, her voice shaking. "They're here, Amara! What do I do?" Amara's knees buckled, Marcus catching her as she gasped. "They won't stop!" Claire slipped out of the courtroom, her gray dress swishing as she joined Ted in the hallway, her smirk returning. "She's done," she said, her voice cold with triumph. "Jail or not, that mob will finish her." Ted grinned, his phone pinging with updates. "Unions has got Grayson in pocket. Footage stays gone. You're golden." Claire's eyes glinted, her victory swelling. She'd turned Amara's trial into a circus, her lies a noose tightening with every shout from the mob outside Amara's home. The courthouse doors swung shut, the trial resuming. But Claire knew she'd already won this round. Or so she thought. Amara sat back at the defense table, her hands trembling, as Marcus squeezed her shoulder, his voice a low growl. "We'll get through this." Evelyn's digging. The courtroom filled again, Grayson's gavel banging as the prosecutor smirked, ready to seal her fate. The mob's chants echoed faintly through the walls, a reminder of Claire's reach. Amara's near win. Marcus's outburst swaying, some jurors faded under the weight of missing evidence, and a judge itching to convict. She'd thought jail was the endgame, that proving Claire's slap would free her. Now, with her family under siege in the courtroom stacked against her, she saw the truth. Claire's hate was a hydra growing uglier with every cut. Night fell over Amara Jackson's suburban Los Angeles home. The quiet street bathed in the faint glow of streetlights as shadows stretched long and menacing across her lawn. Inside, Amara barricaded herself in the bathroom. Her 6-month-old son, Isaiah, clutched tight against her chest, his soft whimpers muffled by her trembling hand. Marcus was still at the courthouse fighting the trial's chaos with Evelyn, leaving Amara alone with her sister-in-law, Kesha, who'd fled to a neighbor's house with her own kids after the mob arrived. The courtroom had been a battlefield, but this was war. Claire Ramsey's leak of Amara's address had unleashed a racist horde, and now they were here pounding at her door. She'd thought Marcus's outburst had given her a chance. She was wrong. The mob outside swelled to 20, their voices a guttural roar that shook the walls. "Get out! You don't belong here!" A man bellowed, his words slurred with rage as he hurled a rock through the living room window. Glass shattered, the crash echoing like gunfire, and Amara flinched, her back. Pressed against the bathroom door, spray paint hissed, red streaks spelling slurs across her white siding. "Thug welfare trash!" The crowd, fueled by Claire's ex-leak, and the trial's lies surged forward, fists banging on the wood boots, kicking at the frame. A woman screeched, "You attacked Claire! Pay for it!" Her voice piercing the night as another brick sailed through, splintering the coffee table Amara had saved months to buy. Amara's heart hammered, her breath shallow, as she fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. "Help us! They're breaking in! Please hurry!" she pleaded, her voice cracking as Isaiah wailed, his tiny body trembling against hers. The operator's response was curt, detached. "We've got a call about a protest. Units are busy. Stay calm." The line clicked dead, and Amara's stomach dropped. Protest. This was an assault, a lynching in the making, and the cops, echoing the bias that had jailed her, dismissed it. She slid to the floor, the tile cold against her legs, and rocked Isaiah, whispering, "Shh, baby, we'll be okay," though the lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Outside, the mob escalated, a Molotov cocktail arcing through the broken window flames, licking the curtains as smoke billowed into the house. Amara's eyes widened, her pulse racing as she smelled the acrid burn. She grabbed a towel, soaking it in the sink, and pressed it to Isaiah's face, coughing as the haze thickened. The front door groaned under a battering ram. Someone had brought tools, their intent clear. They wouldn't stop until she was gone. "Burn it down!" A man shouted, his silhouette hulking against the flickering firelight. Amara's mind raced, her trial fading to a distant nightmare. Survival was all that mattered now. Claire watched from a safe distance, parked in a rental car 2 blocks away, her blonde hair hidden under a hoodie, her pale eyes glinting with vicious glee. The news played on her phone, a live feed of the mob's chaos, reporters framing it as outrage over the Jackson trial. She smirked, texting Ted. "They're at her house. She's finished." His reply buzzed. "Perfect. Grayson's leaning our way. You're back tomorrow." Claire leaned back, the glow of flames reflecting in her windshield. She'd lost her job, faced suspension. But this Amara's home in ashes, her life in ruins, was sweeter than any reinstatement. She'd broken her, and the mob was her fist. Amara fought back, her instincts kicking in. She crawled to the bathroom window, prying it open with one hand, the other clutching Isaiah. Smoke stung her eyes, but she spotted a shed in the backyard. A slim chance at safety. She hoisted herself out, dropping 6 FT to the grass, her knees buckling as she landed. Isaiah's cries sharpened, but she stumbled forward. The mobs roared, deafening, as they breached the front door, their boots stomping through her burning. Home as she reached the shed, slipping inside and barricaded the door with a rusty shovel. Her breath ragged as she pulled out her phone again. She hit record. Live streaming to X. Her voice trembling but fierce. "This is Amara Jackson, Amara. They're burning my house because of Claire Ramsey's lies. Look at this. My sons here were trapped." She panned the camera. Smoke curling through the shed's cracks. Isaiah's wails. A haunting soundtrack. She posted it, her hands shaking as the views climbed. 5,000, 10,000, outrage flooding the comments. "This is insane. Claire's a monster. Save her." Amara's chest heaved, hope flickering as strangers rallied. But the mob's shouts grew closer, their flashlights slicing through the dark. "She's out back," a woman yelled, and footsteps thudded toward the shed. The police finally arrived, 2 squad cars screeching to a halt, but their response twisted Amara's fleeting relief into dread. 4 officers stepped out, their faces stern, their hands on holsters as they approached. Not the mob, but her. "Amara Jackson." One called, his voice sharp as he kicked the shed door open, flashlight blinding her. "You're under arrest for inciting a riot." Amara's jaw dropped, her phone still streaming as she clutched Isaiah. "What, they attacked me?" she shouted. But the officer grabbed her arm, yanking her up, the live stream capturing his sneer. "Tell it to the judge, troublemaker," he snapped, cuffing her, as the mob cheered, flames roaring behind them. Claire's grin widened in her car, the news feed cutting to Amara's arrest, the anchor's voice grim. Jackson apprehended after inciting violence at her residence. Claire laughed, a cold, triumphant sound, as Ted texted, "Genius, she's toast." She'd turned Amara's home into a war zone, her live stream into a noose, and the cops, primed by her narrative, into her executioners. The mob dispersed, their work done, leaving Amara's house a smoldering ruin. Claire started her engine, driving off into the night, her victory ablaze she'd stoked to perfection. Amara was broken, arrested again, her family shattered. She'd never recover. Amara sat in the squad car, cuffs biting her wrists, Isaiah screaming in a social worker's arms nearby. Her live stream had hit 50,000 views, outrage spreading, but it hadn't saved her. The officer smirked in the front seat, muttering, "Should have stayed quiet." Amara's eyes burned with tears. She refused to shed, her mind racing. She'd escaped the flames, turned the mob's attack into a plea for help. But Claw's trap had snapped shut. The trial, the threats, the fire, all led to this. A second arrest that crushed her courtroom hope. As the car pulled away, her home a charred skeleton against the sky. She whispered, "I won't stop," a vow against the darkness swallowing her. Hey, you fierce viewers, this is next level madness. Comment number 1 if you think Claire's mob deserves jail time for torching Amara's life. Justice can't wait. Or drop a 2 if you believe Amara's live stream will turn the tide against this hate. If you're screaming at this outrage like we are, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit notifications. We're riding this storm with you. Amar's down, but not out. Can her voice break through the ashes, or will Claire's fire burn her to the ground? The Los Angeles County Jail swallowed Amara Jackson whole the morning after her home burned, its gray walls closing in as she stumbled through intake. Her wrists chafed raw from the handcuffs that had bound her during the mob's attack. Her 6-month-old son Isaiah was gone, taken by Child Protective Services after her arrest for inciting a riot, a charge born from Claire Ramsey's twisted lies and the cops' refusal to see her as a victim. Her navy blazer was replaced by an orange jumpsuit, her hair tangled from the night's chaos, her dark eyes hollow but unyielding. She'd live-streamed the invasion, turned the mob's hate into a cry for help, and thought the world's outrage would save her. Now locked in a cell, she faced a hell she hadn't imagined. The holding area stank of bleach and despair, its concrete floor under her bare feet, as guards shoved her forward. 2 officers, both white, loomed over her, their badges glinting in the dim light. The taller one, a beefy man with a shaved head, sneered as he tossed her a thin blanket. "You don't belong anywhere, do you?" he said, his voice thick with the same contempt Claire had spat on the plane. The shorter guard, wiry with a scar across his cheek, chuckled, leaning close. "Ramsey's a hero around here. You're just trash," she took out. Amara's stomach twisted, her breath shallow as she clutched the blanket, refusing to let their words break her. She was shoved into a cell block, the iron bars clanging shut behind her, locking her in with a dozen other women. The air buzzed with tension, eyes tracking her every move. A group of inmates, their faces hardened by time, whispered as she passed, their voices low but venomous. "That's her, the one who attacked Claire," one muttered, her tattooed arm flexing as she cracked her knuckles. Amara's live stream had gone viral, over 100,000 views now. But here, Claire's narrative reigned. The guards had spread it, their bias a spark that lit the Cell B block's views. Amara kept her head high, her jaw set, but fear coiled tight in her chest. The attack came at dusk, the cell block lights flickering as dinner trays clattered. 3 inmates cornered her near the bunks, their movements swift, rehearsed. The leader, a stocky woman with a shaved head and a scar slicing her brow, grabbed Amara's arm, twisting it hard. "Claire's got friends here," she hissed, her breath hot against Amara's face. "You're done." A second woman, lanky with matted hair, swung a fist, catching Amara's jaw with a crack that sent her reeling. The third, wiry and silent, kicked her ribs, the pain exploding as Amara crumpled, her gasps drowned by their grunts. The guards watched from the catwalk, their radios silent, their smirks visible through the bars. Amara curled into a ball, protecting her core, as blows rained down her mind, screaming for Isaiah, for Marcus, for air. Blood trickled from her lip, her vision blurring. But she wouldn't beg. She'd survived the slap, the mob, the fire. This wouldn't break her either. The leader raised a shank, a jagged metal shard glinting in the dim light, but a shout stopped her. "Enough, Tara." A wiry black inmate with gray streaks in her braids shoved through her eyes, blazing. "Back off. She ain't your enemy." The attackers hesitated, Tarara's presence a shield, and slunk away muttering curses as the guards finally barked. "Break it up." Tara helped Amara up, her grip firm but gentle, her voice low. "I saw your live stream. You're not what they say." Amara wiped blood from her mouth, her ribs throbbing and nodded gratitude swelling despite the pain. "Thank you," she rasped, leaning against the bunk as Tara handed her a rag. "They're Claire's dogs." Guards egged them on. Amara's eyes narrowed, her mind sharpening through the haze. Tara was an ally, a crack in this prison's wall. She'd fight from here somehow. She whispered, "I need to get word out." And Tara grinned, slipping her a pencil stub. "Write it. I'll smuggle it." Outside, Marcus waged war. He stormed Horizon Airlines HQ, his 6'4" frame a thundercloud, as he slammed files on his desk, his deep voice barking orders to Evelyn over the phone. "She's in jail again. CPS took Isaiah. Find that footage now." Evelyn's reply crackled. "Working on it. Courthouse glitch wasn't random. Claire's union's dirty. I've got a lead." Marcus paced, his hands trembling as he dialed Kesha, who'd fled with Isaiah to a safe house. "He's okay," she said, her voice tight. "But they're hunting us." Marcus's jaw clenched, his rage of furnace. Claire had turned his family into prey, and he'd burn her world to ash for it. In her motel room, Claire gloated. The UTV replaying Amara's arrest, her reinstatement, now official. She lounged on the bed, her blonde hair loose, her eyes gleaming as Ted called. "You're back tomorrow. Union's got Grayson locked. She's facing years." Claire laughed, a sharp, victorious sound. "Good. She's where she belongs." But then Ted's tone shifted. "Her live stream's at 200,000 views. People are pissed." Claire's smirk faltered, her fingers tightening on the phone. She refreshed X. Amara's plea from the shed was trending, cracks forming in her narrative. She texted a guard contact, "Plant drugs on her, life sentence now." Amara scribbled a note in the cell, her pencil shaking, as Tara hovered, watching for guards. "Marcus, I'm alive. Claire's got the jail rigged. Attacks, drugs next. Get me out," she wrote, folding it tight. Tara slipped it into her sock, her nod firm. "I'll get it to the gate. Hang on." Amara leaned back, her body bruised, her spirit battered but unbroken. The live stream had sparked hope, Tara's help a lifeline. She'd thought the mob was Claire's final blow, that her arrest was the end. Now locked in this hell, she saw the depth of Claire's hate. A machine grinding her down piece by piece. The cell block quieted the night, stretching long as Amara lay on her bunk, pain pulsing through her ribs. The guards' footsteps echoed their whispers, carrying Claire's name like a prayer. Tara returned, her face grim. "It's out. Your man will get it." Amara exhaled a flicker of relief amid the nightmare. But then the tall guard appeared, his shaved head gleaming as he tossed a baggie of white powder onto her bunk. "Found this on you." He sneered, his radio crackling as he called it in. "Drug possession, add it to her sheet." Amara's eyes widened, her voice rising. "That's not mine." He laughed, slamming the cell door. "Prove it, princess." Claire's bribe had landed. The guard her puppet in a play to bury Amara for life. The cell block stirred, inmates watching as Amara stood, the baggie, a death sentence in her hands. She tossed it back, her voice still. "You won't win this." The guard smirked, walking off, but Tara's eyes met hers. A silent vow to fight. Amara's live stream had rallied strangers. Marcus was closing in, yet here in this cage, Claire's claws sank deeper. The trial, the fire, the arrest all palled against this prison hell, a nightmare she'd barely survived, with worse looming on the horizon. 2 days after Amara Jackson's jail nightmare began, the Los Angeles County Jail buzzed with a restless hum. its gray corridors echoing with the clatter of trays and the shouts of inmates. Amara sat on her bunk, her 6-month-old son Isaiah still lost to CPS, her bruised body aching from the inmate attack. Her orange jumpsuit stained with dried blood. The baggie of drugs Claire Ramsey's guard had planted lay confiscated, a life sentence looming over her like a guillotine. Tara, her wiry ally with gray-streaked braids, hovered nearby her eyes, scanning the cell block for threats. Amara's live stream plea from the shed had hit 300,000 views, a distant spark of hope. But here in this concrete hell, Claire's claws held tight. She'd thought Tara's smuggled note would reach Marcus. She was about to find out. Outside, Marcus Ellison stormed through Horizon Airlines HQ, his 6'4" frame a whirlwind of rage as he clutched Tara's note. Its pencil scroll a lifeline from Amara. "Marcus, I'm alive. Claire's got the jail rigged. Attacks. Drugs next. Get me out." His deep voice boomed across the sleek office, his dark suit creased from sleepless nights. "Evelyn, it's confirmed. Claire bribed a guard. Drugs planted. Shut this down now." Evelyn, his sharp-eyed lawyer, stood at his desk, her phone pressed to her ear, her steel gray bob glinting under the lights. "Got a whistleblower union insider?" The footage resurfaced, too. "We're moving," she said, her tone a blade, cutting through the chaos. Marcus acted fast, his fury of furnace driving him. He called a press conference, his towering presence dominating the HQ lobby as cameras flashed reporters jostling for sound bites. "Claire Ramsey's done," he declared, his voice a thunderclap. "She assaulted my wife, framed her, burned our home, and now she's rigging jail. I'm shutting her union contract. Every ally she's got at Horizon is fired, effective immediately." The room erupted, gasps and murmurs rippling as he held up the real footage. HD security cam proof of Claire's slap recovered from a backup Evelyn's team had unearthed. The video played on a giant screen. Amara's stunned face clear, Claire's hand striking with vicious intent. The tide turned gasps, turning to outrage. Claire reinstated, and smug strutted into Horizon's LAX crew lounge that morning, her blonde hair pinned tight, her uniform crisp again. She'd gloated in her motel, her TV interviews a victory lap, her drug plant a masterstroke. But the lounge TV blared Marcus's conference, her smirk vanishing as his words sank in. "Fired." She whispered, her pale hands trembling as co-workers stared, some backing away, others glaring. Ted burst in, his wiry frame sweating, his phone buzzing with union panic. "They've got the footage," Claire contracts toast. Grayson's wavering, her stomach dropped, her eyes darting to the screen as Amara's slap replayed her lie exposed in brutal clarity. In jail, Amara felt the shift. The tall guard with the shaved head stormed past her cell, his face red, his radio crackling with orders. "Ramsey's out. Ellison's cleaning house." A voice snapped through static. The inmates who'd attacked her exchanged uneasy glances, their bravado fading as Tara grinned, her voice low. "Your man's a beast." No two worked. Amara's chest swelled, her bruises pulsing with renewed hope. The cell block buzzed. Guards scrambling. The planted drug suddenly a liability. Evelyn's whistleblower had flipped, naming Claire's guard, and the real footage hit X, 500,000 views in hours, drowning Claire's doctored lie with truth. The courthouse reconvened that afternoon, Judge Grayson's jowls quivering as Evelyn strode in, the HD footage loaded on a new drive. "Your Honor, this proves my client's innocence," she said, her voice steel as the slap played. Claire's hand unmistakable. Grayson's bias cracked his pen, stilling, as the jury gasped, the young black woman nodding fiercely, the older man's face paling. The prosecutor stammered. This changes nothing," but his voice faltered. Grayson banged his gavel, his tone grudging. Charges dismissed. Jackson's free. Amara's cuffs clicked off her wrists raw, but her spirit soaring as she walked out, the jail doors slamming shut behind her. Marcus met her at the gate, his arms engulfing her. Isaiah nestled in a carrier against his chest. "You're home." he said, his deep voice breaking as she kissed Isaiah's forehead, tears spilling free. Crowds cheered beyond the fence, her live stream army chanting her name, signs waving Amara's truth wins. She'd survived Claire's hell slapfire jail drugs and emerged her bruises a badge of resilience. The footage Marcus's purged Tarara's note, it had all collided to break Claire's grip. Amara breathed deep, the air sweet with freedom, believing the nightmare was over. But Claire wouldn't quit. Holed up in her motel, her reinstatement revoked, her union gutted. She raged, her blonde hair wild as she scrolled X, the real footage a viral dagger in her gut. Ted called, his voice frantic. "You're done, Claire. Ellison's untouchable now." She slammed the phone down, her eyes burning with defiance. She dialed a new number, a growly voice answering. "Yeah, it's Ramsey," she hissed. "Kill her tonight. I'll pay double." The hitman grunted. "Consider it done." Claire smirked, her loss a spark for a deadlier fire. Amara's release wasn't the end. It was her next target. That night, Amara stood in a hotel room Marcus had secured. There burned home a memory they couldn't face. Isaiah slept in a settee crib, his tiny breaths calming her as she showered, washing jail's filth away. Marcus paced the hall, his phone buzzing with Evelyn's updates. Claire's broke unions dissolved. She's got nothing left. He exhaled, joining Amara, his hand brushing her shoulder. "We won," he said, his voice soft. She nodded, her wet hair dripping relief washing over her like the water. The trial, the mob, the cell, all faded under this fragile peace. Then it happened. A blast rocked the parking lot, the hotel window shattering as Amara's car exploded, flames licking the night sky. She screamed, diving for Isaiah as Marcus yanked them behind the bed glass raining around them. The hitman, a shadow in a black jacket, slipped away, his silenced pistol still warm from a warning shot through the windshield. Amara's heart pounded, her victory torched in an instant. Claire's voice echoed in her mind, her motel rant, her unyielding hate. The jail had been a cage. This was a death sentence. Marcus grabbed his phone, dialing 911 as smoke curled through the room, his voice a roar. Explosion outside. "Get here now." Amara clutched Isaiah, her bruises flaring as she crawled to the door, the heat seeping in. The cheers from her release faded, replaced by sirens wailing in the distance. Claire had lost everything. Job union trial. But she'd struck back. Her hitman a phantom, turning Amara's freedom into ash. The hotel shook, guests screaming in the halls, and Amara's eyes met Marcus. Her voice a whisper, "She won't stop." He nodded, his jaw set, knowing the war wasn't over. Midnight draped Los Angeles in a shroud of haze. The hotel parking lot ablaze as Amara Jackson crouched behind the bed. Her 6-month-old son, Isaiah, clutched tight against her chest. The explosion of her car had shattered the window glass shards, glinting like jagged stars across the carpet. The acrid stench of gasoline and smoke flooding the room. Marcus Ellison, her towering husband, shielded them, his 6'4" frame taut with fury as he scanned the wreckage outside, his deep voice. A low growl, "Stay down, Amara." Her bruises from jail throbbed, her orange jumpsuit swapped for a hotel robe, but her dark eyes burned with resolve. Claire Ramsey's hitman had struck, turning her release into a death trap. She wouldn't let it end. Here, flames roared in the lot below. The mangled husk of Amara's sedan, a fiery beacon, as hotel guests screamed, fleeing down hallways clogged with panic. Sirens wailed in the distance, too far to save them now. A shadow moved outside. A man in a black jacket, the hitman Claire had hired, his silenced pistol glinting as he crept toward the hotel stairwell. Amara's heart pounded, her breath shallow as she whispered to Isaiah, "Shh, baby, we're okay." His whimpers soft against her racing pulse. Marcus grabbed a lamp, yanking its cord free, his hand steady despite the chaos. "He's coming up," he said, his tone lethal, ready to fight. Amara's mind raced, survival instincts kicking in. She'd escaped jail, the mob, the fire. This was her stand. She spotted the neighbor's shed key on the dresser, a relic from their burned home she'd kept in her bag. "The shed," she hissed, pointing to the window facing the lot's edge where a maintenance shed stood 50 ft away, a slim refuge. Marcus nodded, his jaw set, and smashed the remaining glass with the lamp base clearing a path. "Go. I'll hold him off," he said, his eyes locking with hers. A silent vow. Amara kissed Isaiah's forehead, her legs trembling but her will iron, and climbed out, dropping to the grass with a thud that jarred her ribs. The hitman reached the third-floor hallway, his boots silent on the carpet, his pistol raised as he scanned room numbers. Marcus waited inside, lamp in hand, his breath steady as the door creaked open. The hitman stepped in, eyes narrowing, and Marcus swung the heavy base cracking against the man's skull with a sickening crunch. The gun clattered, firing a muted shot into the wall as the hitman staggered, blood trickling from his temple. Marcus lunged, tackling him, his fists pounding as the man fought back, a knife flashing from his sleeve, slicing Marcus's arm with a wet rip. Amara stumbled across the lot, Isaiah's weight slowing her as flames cast wild shadows around her. The hitman's grunts echoed from above Marcus's roar, a lifeline she clung to. She reached the shed, kicking the door open, its rusty hinges groaning as she slipped inside. Tools littered the floor, shovels, a crowbar, a coil of rope, her eyes darting for a weapon. She grabbed the crowbar, her hands slick with sweat, and wedged it against the door, barricading it as footsteps thudded closer. The hitman had broken. Free shoving Marcus aside, his knife dripping as he leapt from the window landing with a roll in the gravel below. Claire watched from a safe house across town, a dingy apartment she'd rented with her last cash. Her blonde hair tangled her pale face, lit by her phone's glow. The hitman's text buzzed. "Car's gone. She's in the shed." Her lips curled, her voice a hiss. Finish her. She'd lost her job, her union, her trial, but this Amara's death would be her win. The news looped the explosion, framing it as unrelated vandalism, but Claire knew better. Her manifesto, a racist screed she'd drafted to rally. Her followers sat ready on X, a final blow to ignite chaos if the hitman failed. She wouldn't accept defeat. Not yet. Amara pressed against the shed wall, Isaiah's cries hushed by her trembling hand as the hitman prowled outside, his silhouette a specter in the firelight. He kicked the door, the crowbar bending but holding his growl audible through the wood. "Come out or I burn it down," he snarled, his knife scraping the frame. Amara's mind flashed. Jail, the mob, the planted drugs. She'd outsmarted worse. She grabbed the rope, looping it around a ceiling beam, and tied a slip knot, her hands swift despite the fear. She set Isaiah in a corner, whispering, "Stay, baby," and climbed, perching above the door as the hitman kicked again, the crowbar snapping. The door burst open, the hitman lunging in his pistol, sweeping the dark. Amara dropped the rope, snapping tight around his neck as she yanked her weight, pulling him off balance. He choked, flailing the gun, firing wild into the ceiling as she swung the crowbar, cracking his wrist with a bone-shattering thud. The pistol fell skittering across the floor and she kicked it away, her breath ragged as he clawed at the rope. Marcus staggered into the lot, blood dripping from his arm, and roared, "Amara!" He charged the shed, tackling the hitman as the rope loosened, his fists pounding until the man went limp, unconscious in the dirt. Amara grabbed Isaiah, her knees buckling, as Marcus dragged the hitman clear, binding his hands with the rope. Sirens screamed closer, red and blue lights flashing as cops swarmed the lot, their shouts cutting through the smoke. "Hands up." An officer barked, but Marcus stood firm, his voice steady. "He attacked us. Hired by Claire Ramsey. Check him." The hitman groaned, his jacket pocket spilling a burner phone with Claire's number glowing on the screen. Amara's live stream from jail had hit 1 million views, her shed plea trending. And now this captured live by a guest's phone from a hotel window. The chase going viral at 200,000 views in minutes. Claire's safe house TV blared. The update, her smirk vanishing as the anchor reported. Suspect apprehended in hotel explosion linked to Claire Ramsey. She raged, hurling her phone at the wall, its screen shattering as her manifesto uploaded. A desperate screed. Amara Jackson's a plague. Rise up, take her down. It hit X, igniting racist replies. But the tide was shifting. Her hitman's failure exposed her lies crumbling. She grabbed a bag, fleeing into the night, her vengeance a wildfire she couldn't control. Amara had survived, turned her trap into triumph, but Claw's parting shot promised more. Amara sank to the grass, Isaiah safe in her arms, Marcus's bloodied hand on her shoulder as cops secured the hitman. Her live stream's echo pulsed, online comments flooding. She's a warrior. Claire's done. The hotel burned behind them. Guests safe but shaken. The lot a war zone of twisted metal and ash. She'd outsmarted the hitman. Marcus's fight buying her time. Yet Claire's manifesto loomed a shadow over her fragile win. She's not finished, Amara whispered, her voice Aro, as Marcus nodded, his eyes dark. Neither are we. 1 week after the hotel explosion, Amara Jackson stood in a sleek Los Angeles news studio. Her 6-month-old son Isaiah cradled in her arms. His soft coup's a quiet anchor amid the storm she'd weathered. The studio lights blazed, casting her bruised but unbowed figure against a backdrop of Horizon Airline's logo, a symbol she'd once tied to Marcus alone. Her dark hair was pulled back, her navy dress crisp, her eyes fierce, as she faced a swarm of reporters, their cameras rolling, microphones thrust forward. Marcus Ellison, her towering husband, stood beside her, his 6'4" frame steady, his arm bandaged from the hitman's knife. The world watched her live streams from the shed and jail, now at 5 million views. Claire Ramsey's manifesto, a viral stain they'd come to erase. She'd survived Slapfire jail assassination, but this was her reckoning. The press conference buzzed. A week of chaos distilled into this moment. Claire's hitman sat in custody, his burner phone linking her to the attack her safe house raided hours after she'd fled. Amara's voice cut through the hum, steady and raw. Claire Ramsey tried to destroy me, she said, her gaze piercing. The lenses. She slapped me, framed me, burned my home, sent a killer after my family, all because I dared to sit in first class with my son. She turned hate into a weapon, but I'm still here. The room hushed, reporters scribbling as she held up a tablet, Claire's manifesto glowing on the screen. A screed of racist venom that had ignited her followers, now backfiring as X flagged it. Accounts banned in droves. Claire's empire of hate collapsed, her arrest unfolding live on every network. She'd been caught in a sting, lured to a gas station by an undercover cop posing as a supporter. Her blonde hair matted, her pale face twisted with fury as cuffs snapped shut. "You'll never belong!" she screamed, her voice shrill, as officers dragged her to a squad car. Her manifesto's echoes drowned by boos from a crowd that had once cheered her. The hitman's confession sealed her fate. Attempted murder, conspiracy, bribery charges piling high as Ted, her union rep, flipped, spilling secrets to save himself. Claire's reign was ash, her power stripped bare. Amara's chest swelled, her bruises a testament to her fight as she continued, her voice rising. She thought she could break me, turn the world against me. But you saw me, millions of you. You shared my truth. And it stopped her. The reporters nodded, some clapping their pens, pausing as her words sank in. Marcus squeezed her shoulder, his deep voice silent, but his presence a fortress. The studio hummed with vindication. Her journey from victim to survivor, a story they couldn't resist. She'd outsmarted Claire at every turn. Live streams, Tara's note, the shed trap, and now stood tall. The mob's fire, a memory she'd turned to strength. Then came the twist. Marcus stepped forward, his bandaged arm raised, his voice a deep rumble that silenced the room. "I've run Horizon Airlines long enough," he said, his brown eyes locking with Amaris's. "I'm stepping down. Effective today, my wife, Amara Jackson, is your new CEO. The studio erupted, gasps and shouts colliding as cameras flashed, reporters scrambling to process the bombshell. Amara's jaw dropped, her breath catching as she stared at him. Isaiah squirming in her stunned grip. "Marcus, what?" she whispered, but he smiled, his hand firm on hers. "You've earned it. You're the heart of this fight." The room spun, Amara's mind reeling as the implication sank in. CEO, not just a survivor, but the power behind Horizon, a throne Claire had coveted and lost. Reporters surged, questions flying. Why now? What's her plan? But Marcus waved them off, his voice steady. "She's faced hell and won. No one's better to lead." Amara's eyes welled, her battered body trembling with a mix of shock and pride. She'd fought for her life, her son, her truth. Now she held the reins, flipping the script on every racist who doubted her, Claire most of all. Claire's jail cell TV blared the broadcast, her scream a raw howl as she lunged at the screen, guards pinning her back. No, she can't have it. Her voice cracked, her pale hands clawing air as Amara's face filled the frame, CEO in bold letters beneath. The reversal was absolute. Claire, the tyrant of first class, now caged. Amara, the slapped mother, now ruling the airline Claire had weaponized against her. The guards smirked, one muttering, "Guess you lost, Ramsey." As her manifesto's last echoes faded, her followers scattering like roaches in light. Amara took the podium, her voice steadying as she gripped the mic. Isaiah's coups a soft rhythm beside her. "Horizon's changing," she said, her tone steel and silk. "My first order. Anyone who spews hate like Claire Ramsey is banned from our flights for life." The room cheered, applause thundering as Marcus nodded, his eye pride a quiet fire. She turned survival into power, her battered hands rewriting the rules Claire had lived by. The reporter scribbled, headlines forming from victim to victor. Amara Jackson takes Horizon. As the studio pulsed with a new energy, her reign beginning. Where Claire's ended, the broadcast cut to Claire's cell, her final scream drowned by Amara's voice, a poetic echo of the intercom that had sparked this war. "You'll never belong," Claire had shrieked. But Amara did more than Claire could fathom. The studio lights dimmed, the press conference winding down. But Amara lingered, her eyes on the horizon beyond the glass. She'd faced a slap, a smear, a mob, a fire, a jail, a hitman, each blow heavier, each counterattack from Claire more ruthless. Yet here she stood, not just free, but commanding her victory, a middle finger to the hate that had tried to crush her. Marcus leaned close, his whisper warm against her ear. "You're unstoppable." Amara smiled, faint but fierce, her fingers brushing Isaiah's curls. "We are," she corrected, her voice a vow. The reporters dispersed, the cameras stilled, but her story burned on. 5 million views and climbing. A tidal wave Claire couldn't outrun. The airline was hers, the power hers, the future hers. She'd flipped the world upside down. A black mother with a baby, now the face of Horizon. A legacy born from ash and defiance. Claire slumped in her cell, the TV dark, her screams fading to silence as the guards walked away. Her manifesto, her mob, her hitman, all dust. Amara's first order banned her kind, a poetic end to a war she'd started with a slap. The jail walls closed in, her power a memory, while Amara's soared, a rehearsal so complete it left no room for doubt. The studio emptied, Los Angeles sprawling beyond, and Amara stepped into her new life, battered but unbroken. Her son in her arms, her husband at her side, her throne secured. This gripping tale of Amara Jackson's battle against Claire Ramsey offers profound lessons rooted in resilience, justice, and the fight against systemic hate. First, it reveals the raw power of perseverance. Amara faced a slap, a smear campaign, a mob, a burning home jail, and a hitman. Each blow fueled by racism, yet she never broke. Her story teaches us that strength isn't loud. It's the quiet will to stand up again and again against overwhelming odds. Second, it exposes the danger of unchecked prejudice. Claire's assumption that Amara didn't belong in first class spiraled into a war of hate, showing how bias, when given power, can destroy lives. It's a stark reminder to question our own judgments and confront the stereotypes we carry. Third, the tale underscores the might of collective action. Amara's live streams turn strangers into allies, toppling CLA's lies with truth amplified by millions. It proves that voices united can shift narratives and dismantle injustice. Finally, the shocking twist. Amara's rise to CEO teaches that victory isn't just survival. It's rewriting the rules. She turned pain into power, banning hate from Horizon Airlines, proving that those who endure can redefine the systems that oppress them. This isn't just a story, it's a call to recognize our own agency in fighting wrong. So what's the takeaway? Stand firm, speak out, and challenge hate, because even one voice can spark a revolution. What do you think? Could you face what Amara did and come out stronger? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if this moved you. Subscribe for more tales of grit and share to spread the fight against racism. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. Here's to courage, justice, and a world where every seat belongs to everyone.